We're here with Patricia today. I'm super excited to have you on as a guest. Number one, because we had such an amazing conversation a little while back. But number two, just because you're actually on the sports psychology side of stuff now. And it's going to be super interesting as we talk through some of these questions here, just to learn more about yourself, your background, and ultimately what inspired you to take the route of going the sports psychology side. So first and foremost, before we get going, just want to dive deeper into, your personal side of stuff. But can you talk a little bit more about your journey into the field of sports psychology and if there was anything initially that sparked that interest?
First of all, thanks for having me. I'm also very excited to be here and to start with my personal journey on how I got into the sports psych field. Sports have always been my passion, always been part of my life. I used to play tennis ever since I was 3, and then I competed professionally in tennis. I got to be the top ranked player in Uruguay. And, as I started playing more tournaments, of course, international, the pressure began to rise. And there I really started noticing my strength and my mental toughness because at that high level, and you can even say at elite levels even more, the physical or the technical skills are basically all the same. So really what varies is the ability of the athlete to rely on their mental skills. And that's what really makes the difference. Eventually I got burned out and tennis is a very individualistic sport. You're traveling by yourself with your coaching staff all the time. So, especially for a teenager that relies heavily, it's a lot of pressure, and navigating that by myself as a teenager was hard. So I got burned out and I decided to quit. But then, I decided also to use my experience as an athlete and combine it with all the knowledge that I have gained through my academic career to help athletes too that are undergoing different type of pressures or different obstacles, or just to enhance their performance and achieve fundamentally overall well-being. So that's how I got into the sports psych world, and it is truly a passion of mine that I enjoy doing it every day.
I know in talking with, I believe it was an individual this past week, we talked a lot about shared experiences, right? And it's a lot easier to relate to someone when you have a shared experience, whether it was, hey, I also played tennis and I can relate to maybe what you're going through and dealing with at a certain level. And so I think it's super unique playing a sport as
Yeah.
challenging and as demanding as tennis is. And then also going into the sports psychology field and saying, not only can I, use that my experiences being a tennis player, but I can also positively impact people as a sports psychologist as well. So that's super cool. I want to level set and just ask you about some misconceptions that people might have about sports psychology, right? They might have heard the word, the term before, and they might start throwing different things in there. Oh, is that mental health? Is that, mental performance? What really is sports psychology? And, how do you address some of those misconceptions?
Especially because the sports psych field is fairly new. It is growing still. And because of all the myths that are around mental health in sports, just in general, we have heard so many times, no pain, no gain. If you show your vulnerability to your opponent, well, that is going to play against you in a competition, right? So I do think that with more athletes coming, speaking up about their mental health and raising more awareness of the importance of mental health, not only the sports psych field, but in general, which is, I think, one of the routes that it's going to be taking more to the mental health side of it, or to the mental health aspect side of it. But of course, there are a lot of misconceptions just because not a lot of people know what is sports psychology and what it underlies really. And I would say just in general, the main way to address these misconceptions is with psychoeducation. So, raising awareness, educating athletes on what my role as a sports psych is, what they can expect from our sessions, how I'm going to help them just improve their performance, how it is mental performance related. So there we get into one of the main misconceptions that I see usually, that is sports psych is equal to therapy, and it is not. So I do agree that there is a mental health aspect of it, but it is not equal to therapy. So They sometimes athletes think that they're going to come and we're going to explore their childhood, their traumas, and how that is affecting their performance. And no, that's not what we do. We are more solution focused. We are more enhancing performance, optimizing their skills. So that is one of the first misconceptions. And like I said, I address them by just pure communication, honest communication, psychoeducation, and clarifying those expectations and the difference between those. Then I would say another big misconception is that sports psychology is only for those that are undergoing issues or that have problems. And of course, every athlete is going to experience some issue or obstacle throughout their career, but that's not only what we're there for. Like I said, we're there to enhance their performance, to provide skills that will allow them to reach peak performance, to improve their self confidence. So it is not necessarily when they're only undergoing problems or issues that we're there for them. Another one that I can think about is that sports psych is only for elite athletes or even for athletes. We as sports psych consultants work not only with sports, but we can also work with performers, with musicians, dancers. There are so many different, or military. So there are many other fields that can also benefit from the skills that we can provide to them. I would then say another misconception is that they think they come to us in one or two sessions. If they're undergoing problems, then they're going to be solved. And I always explain it to them like, if you want to gain more muscle mass, you go to the gym consistently. It's like any other physical skill. Mental skills are the same. They require consistent practice. They require patience. They require time to develop them. So that of like, yeah, just go talk to you for a couple of hours or 2 times per week and we're done. And it's not that. It requires consistent practice. And then lastly, I would say another misconception is that sports psychology is only about this positive thinking mindset and mental toughness. And yeah, of course, positive mindset is very important to, and that's one thing we train as sports psychology, but sports psychology consultants, but it goes way beyond that. It involves the development of what many other psychological skills and many other strategies that are, of course, evidence-based, that are based on research, and that need to be tailored specifically to each individual. We provide tools not only for reframing thoughts and making them more positive, but also for stress management, like I said, to enhance their self-confidence, to regulate their emotions, to improve their focus. So like you can see that those are not only applicable when they are undergoing problems, but they're always very important to keep training them. And when those moments of obstacles arise, then they have those tools in their toolbox to actually implement them.
To kind of flip the script now into more of the current role that you're in, do you mind just explaining a little bit about how you specifically collaborate with the coaches, the teams that you're working with to help support those athletes and overall help their performance out?
Yeah, to start with the coaches piece, and this is a conversation I have with many of people that have a lot of experience in the field already. And the work with coaches is so crucial to be able to allow athletes to achieve that peak performance. In reality, coaches are the ones that spend the most time with the athletes. We might be there for practices, we might be there part of their support system, yeah, but they come to sessions with us, let's say once a week, and then we have team sessions. But in reality, they're constantly with coaches. And of course, everything that coaches say, they rely very heavily on it. So they have a huge influence on the athlete's well-being. So I believe it is very crucial to teach coaches and work with them on how to regulate themselves, because I think athletes are kind of like a reflection of their coaches. So let's say a coach gets to practice and he's moody and he's stressed out and he's not communicating efficiently, then athletes are also going to face that practice with that same mood. They're kind of going to reflect what the coach is bringing to the practice. So that's why it's very important to also work with coaches on stress management, on improving their communication skills, on leadership skills, everything that's also, of course, going to influence positively on the athlete's well-being and hence their performance. Also because of the fact that the more the athletes listen to the same message, so the more the sports side and coaches and any other staff member, supporting staff member, if we're on the same page and we're speaking on the same terms and they listen to it over and over again, of growth mindset, of positive self-talk, of resilience, these terms, if they're listening to them, that's going to allow them to rewire their brains and, of course, internalize these terms better and more efficiently and hence apply them. So working with coaches on this is a huge piece of the sports psych world.
If you had to identify a few of the common mental hurdles that athletes face, right? Reoccurring stuff, whether it's tennis, baseball, football, basketball, what would those reoccurring challenges be? And how do you help those athletes overcome them?
Well, this is the big question, especially because I do think that these challenges are, like you said, in different sports, right? These challenges are related to the sport, to the nature and the dynamic of the sport. So, I'm going to try to generalize my answer as much as possible to these hurdles or obstacles that athletes face. The main one that I can think about, and this one happens especially in individual sports, is perfectionism. And just some athletes in general have this tendency of being perfectionists, but by setting unrealistic goals, by setting very high standards for themselves, being overcritical with their performance, with their thoughts, with their feelings. So of course, these places them in a position where they are more vulnerable to get stressed out, to not be able to manage that stress, and lead to burnout. So perfectionism is very linked to burnout. That's why the main thing that I work on here with athletes that are very perfectionist is learning how to set more realistic goals and be more flexible with whatever they're facing in life, because of course these perfectionist tendencies are not only related to sports. If they're student athletes, they usually tend to be perfectionists academically too, so being more flexible with everything that they have to handle with the situations that they're facing. And I do this a lot through enhancing self-compassion, which is a huge piece on working with these athletes. And also the fact that perfectionism tends to be more focused on the solution or like the outcome. So we redirect that focus of attention to the process and the progress that they have made, and, step by step being proud of themselves with that self-compassion piece, understanding they are improving, even though they might not be where they want to be, there's still something that they can learn and grow from in that process. So focusing on the process and not necessarily the outcome is very important with these athletes. Another hurdle that I see a lot is very generalizable to sports, or any sport, performance anxiety. And this can manifest in so many different ways, depending on the athlete, like I said, depending on the nature of the sport. But in general, nervousness, tension, self-doubt, and it can be pre-performance anxiety, so before competing or actually like during the competition. And for this, there's several relaxation techniques that can be taught to athletes, such as diaphragmatic breathing. Any breathing technique in general really works for performance anxiety. Progressive muscle relaxation too. So, of course, mind, body, we're unity. So I always tell them, if you focus on the way your body is feeling and you try to relax your body as much as possible, that's also going to have an influence on your mind. And just trying to relax your body through progressive muscle relaxation will then have a positive impact on the way you're interpreting that situation. Calm your body, calm your mind, basically. And also for performance anxiety, we use some cognitive behavioral strategies where the athletes become aware of their negative thoughts, and we challenge those. We try to understand where they're coming from, challenge them with facts that prove those thoughts wrong, and then do some positive reframing there. So convert, not denying the reality, but seeing it from another perspective. Another hurdle is lack of confidence. that can manifest through self-doubt, through low self-esteem, and we can build confidence in many different ways. So trying to summarize this as much as possible. Visualization is a good technique for improving confidence, positive self-talk, goal setting, realistic goals. And then one that I really like is journaling exercises where they freely journal, and I also give them sometimes prompts if that's something that I think will help them more. Depends on the athlete, of course. And for improving confidence, also focusing on past successes, like I just said, their strengths, and that is going to allow them to develop a more resilient and more of a growth mindset. And the last one I would say is fear of failure. The fear of failure really can be paralyzing to some athletes, and of course, that's going to prevent them from either taking risks or even performing, because that fear can get so bad that they don't even want to step in the court or in the field or in the pool or whatever it is that the sport that they are in. So of course that's going to get in the way of them reaching peak performance. And for fear of failure, I find mindfulness to be one of the most powerful tools, especially the acceptance piece. I always tell them, you're a human being, you're not perfect, you're gonna make mistakes. So accepting the fact that they're gonna make mistakes is already gonna allow them to reinterpret that situation as something, okay, this is natural, I'm gonna make mistakes. I don't have to be scared or afraid of making mistakes, because if I know and I go in knowing I'm gonna make mistakes, then that of course takes the whole pressure out of the mistake. And so you don't have that fear as much anymore. So, reinterpreting these obstacles from threats, something that's going to get in the way of me achieving what I want, to challenges. And this reinterpretation, of course, takes time, takes a lot of cognitive strategies, cognitive behavioral strategies, a lot of self-compassion. So they all kind of overlap. It's very hard to work only on one. But this is exactly what I'm talking about. We try to give athletes as many tools as possible for them to have in their toolbox, so they can actually, whenever they're facing one of these obstacles, whenever they're experiencing a negative emotional state, they can bring as many tools out as possible, and just grow from that obstacle, grow from that situation, and develop that growth mindset.
I want to bring you back a little bit to what you had mentioned about confidence, because I think confidence plays such a big role within just being a student athlete, performing, all of that good stuff. And I know that you had mentioned self talk being such a pivotal role in confidence itself. And do you mind kind of just explaining a little bit more about how an athlete can start to really reflect positive self talk in their day to day lives? And, what you typically try to instill in any of those, I guess, either lessons or conversations with athletes who are struggling with, some negative self talk?
Self-talk is crucial. It plays a crucial role in performance. Research has shown that there are so many different studies that have proven that self-talk has a crucial impact on performance. And we can go into the different types of self-talk that there are, just to generalize it or summarize it. We have motivational and instructional. Both can be positive, both can be negative or more productive, because a lot of times the word positive is related to positive affirmations, right? To I am the best, I can do this, I got this, let's go. And for some athletes, that doesn't work. For some athletes, thinking, come on, you're better than this, which is not like, this has been one of your worst performances, you can do better than this, which is not necessarily focusing on the positive aspect, but that's productive for them. So some people like to call it productive self-talk rather than positive, but for this, we're going to call it positive self-talk. And I like introducing this term to my athletes with a simple equation that for me reflects on every skill that I teach them, and is our thoughts influence our feelings influence the way we interpret our appraisal of the situation, so the way we interpret the things that are happening to us, and that is going to influence the way we react to them, so our behavior. So if you see that simple equation, it all goes back to our thoughts. And self-talk, what it does, it influences our thoughts. So then, the rest of it is going to flow, so that athletes can start aligning their behavior with their desired outcome. So that's the influence, the most powerful influence that self-talk has, or the way I see it and I interpret it, the influence that it has on athletes' behavior. The more productive or positive self-talk they have, then the more they will be able to align their feelings and the way they interpret the situation with their desired outcome, or their goals. So one approach that I take to help my athletes enhance or develop this positive self-talk is, like I mentioned, with cognitive behavioral strategies, so cognitive restructuring. And this involves for a lot of awareness. So it goes back to also the mindfulness piece, but identifying these negative thoughts and challenging them. Then once we have understood them in a better way, we can replace them with more adaptive ones. So what I do is that I provide a grid that has basically what the situation was, what your thought to it, the thought that you related to it, how that made you feel, and then we do some positive reframing. Because there you see, we're not denying the reality, because of course, there's a piece of validating their feelings and everything. So we're not denying that this made you feel this way. But if we see it from a different perspective, then you might feel different. And then you might act different. So there's one important piece for positive self-talk. And another one, like I said, positive affirmations. This counteracts that negative self-talk and, of course, reinforces more confidence, more belief in their abilities to achieve what they want. It is very important to help athletes through this process, because positive affirmations might look like something simple, but they need to be very specific to their needs, to their sport, to the context, the timing. So we go through all that process together, and we see where the best moments to apply these positive affirmations are. For some of them, it's in the shower. For some of them, it's right before they step into the court or the field or the pool. So it's really unique. It really depends on their individual needs. These affirmations, the more they practice them and the more they're aware that, this is something important that I need to do for myself, or outside of the sport even, the more they practice it, the more they're going to work in those moments of self-doubt and high pressure situations. Going back to one of the skills that I'm very passionate about and I really love, because it counteracts this perfectionism that athletes just naturally come with. It's self-compassion and self-acceptance, because it encourages to treat themselves with kindness in a way that I think athletes usually think of, if I'm compassionate to myself, then I might slack and I might not be giving my best effort. And what they don't understand is you might be giving your best effort and still not be where you want to, and that's okay. Like, we're gonna keep working on that to get you where you want to be. But athletes tend to be too harsh on themselves if they don't achieve what they thought was what they needed. So that self-compassion piece also adds a lot to the positive self-talk.